Biotechnology and genetic engineering is just a step in humanity's future, and it's a bright one. Biotechnology is the manipulation of living functions into medicine such as vaccines, antibiotics, and hormones. While the study of this science has been around a while, its current scope of technology has not reached its peak and it is still, without a doubt, in its infancy. In the beginnings of this science, we barely understood how our own bodies worked, to the creation of vaccines and cures for conditions previously thought incurable, like polio. Now we are able to genetically engineer the cosmetic appearance of our newborn. Albeit limited, it's still very considerable. That magnitude of a step opens up a new avenue of possibilities with genetic engineering and biotech. These many avenues spell out the future for humankind. With technological advances, we could see the end of most, if not all, diseases, including cancers, and even considerably slowing down the aging process, which of course we're all interested in. So we can effectively remove genetically transmitted diseases from a gene pool. But with many advances comes just as many adversities. When faced with genetic altering technology, people can't help but think, isn't this playing God? But optimizing our quality of life is not the same as playing God. It's the same way we control our diets during pregnancy or control our diets for an optimal body image, we can control our genes to improve our quality of life. Say you found out that if you rub coconut oil in your hair, it will not only considerably reduce hair loss, but also improve the luster, shine, and thickness of it. I'm sure at the first sign of a receding hairline, you will shove your whole head in a jar of it. How is that any different from preventing hair loss in your family through genes? Besides it being a lot less dangerous to rub your oil in hair, of course, than the splicing and engineering of genes. Now, while I'm encouraging the liberal advances of this technology, it doesn't come without risks. As I've said before, the technology, though we've come this far, is still in its infancy, especially when it comes to physical gene manipulation with babies. Even with what we know now, it's not a 100% success rate. The procedure I mentioned earlier regarding the editing of a physical outcome of an infant, it's not 100%. What if you remember your grandma with beautiful blonde hair and blue eyes, and you came out with brown eyes and black hair? But judging from your grandma, you know the genes are there, so you would like your child to have them. So you talk to your doctor about ensuring your baby had those genes, strengthening them, and even for that child's offspring long down the road. Sounds easy, maybe for you, but not for the doctor. 9 months go by, and an agonizing several hours later, you discover your baby has brown eyes. You spent X amount of dollars for a procedure, and now the designer baby you really wanted is just a regular baby you spent extra money for. What I'm getting at is not the waste of money, but the potential problem the parent may now have with the child. And what I mean by problems are the parent had expectations of what that child was going to be, right? But now they're different and potentially could cause the parent to treat them differently. So, and some would put the blame on the procedure, which of course it isn't. If she wouldn't have tried to edit her baby, then she wouldn't have had to feel that the child is inadequate, and people might say that, but the root of the problem there is the parenting. No matter how your child comes, it's your responsibility to care for it. That same argument could be posed about, let's say you give birth to a physically deformed child or a disabled child. Would you blame that debilitation for the parent's behavior or treatment of that child? Of course not. It's the parent's responsibility to care for that child regardless of the outcome. But humans aren't perfect, and neither are their procedures. No matter how much we iron out the systems and processes, there will still be a chance of failure no matter what. It's our duty to minimize that chance to the lowest possible percent regardless. On that subject of risks, another on people's minds is the accessibility of that procedure. So we're speaking of a very expensive procedure. And of course, at first, it's going to be insanely expensive, and only for the richest of the rich. This may cause classified and unfairness for the impoverished, but there already is classified, and people fear that since the rich will be the ones with access, they will monopolize their influence and power through designer children. And what I mean by that is they'll have a family line of genetically superior people while everyone else is forced to fend with their genetic impairments. So for example, or not for example, but the rich will have their perfect lineage while the impoverished will be forced to fend off their impairments. Unfortunately, like every other vaccine, this will be the case at first, but it'll be for a short time relatively. After processing the amount of resources it takes and distribution, it will be priced much more affordably and will most likely be included in health insurance plans. Then it'll be as common as a flu vaccine. But every path in life has risks, like I've mentioned time and time again, I'm sure. So the presence of serious risk should not be the determining factor to cease the study of a science, not only because of the risks in every other field of science, but because they're meant to be overcome for progress, especially in a field that has such great potential. Fortunately, biotechnology and genetic engineering doesn't just stop on the human body, but every living thing on the planet. including the food we grow. We can manipulate plant life to grow in any environment and retain the precise amounts of water and sunlight for it to grow optimally. This will greatly mitigate hunger across all nations, of course. We can do this for about any plant. And aside from the manipulation of plant life, we can also grow our own livestock. We can infinitely produce sheep for cloth or cattle for food. This will seemingly produce an infinite source of food, making it easier for distribution globally, though I'm sure it probably won't taste as good as the original, but we'll get there. So with the promise of faster IQs, longer lifespans, and no more having to worry about genetic disease or food or otherwise, the future really does seem bright. However, we will face a lot, if not all, the problems I have mentioned throughout the presentation. Humans are not without flaw, like I've mentioned. I'm sure we will see riots against the playing of God, that we are all participating in a mass grave sin, and that the rioters will see designer babies as demon spawn, as unnatural synthetic human beings. There will be an outcry against the rich and their army of genetically superior children being prepped every moment of every day to run the show after their parents are long gone. All in all, I think it won't be much different than the riots or protests we see today regarding modern problems. There will always be people who are against the grain, trying to stop progress or the inevitable. And while at times our future may look bleak, I don't believe it is. Untold technological advances await, and with advances in medicine, technology, communication, genetic engineering, and food distribution, well, like I said at the very beginning, our future as the human race is bright.